The following is a training module on how best to get prospects on the phone. This is actually really important to focus on because this is really one of your biggest challenges. It is extremely difficult just to simply get prospects on the phone these days. And so if you have the best product on the market, the best price, the best phone script, you're the most talented salesperson, all that doesn't really do you much good if you can't ever get in front of the prospect or get the prospect on the phone. So the first thing that can often be challenging is just figuring out who to call. Companies today can often be huge. They can be like mazes. It can be unclear who is the right person to connect with and who is the right person to call. So, and just really figuring out from an actual name or phone number standpoint, that can be challenging in itself. And then once you do have that name and that person identified, just simply getting them on the phone can be challenging. A lot of times you're trying to reach decision makers, and the reality is that not only do decision makers often try to avoid phone calls from other companies or from anybody really, but decision makers are often away from their desk. It's very likely that a decision maker is in meetings all day, right? Because whenever a project is going on or something something important is going on, meetings are held, and usually the people that approve or make decisions are in a lot of those meetings. So it's not uncommon for a VP or a director or senior business owner, president, to have their calendar where it's just nothing but blocks all day long, and they're in meetings. So which means they're not at their desk. So regardless of how many times you call, they're never going to answer the phone because they're not there. So it's kind of important to visualize that when you're calling some of these very important individuals. Also, if they've been away, even if they are at their desk when you do call, it's likely that they've been away maybe they've been in meetings all morning and they're playing catch up. And if they're busy playing catch up, the last thing they might want to do is answer the phone. So especially if they don't recognize your number, or if they do recognize your number and know that you're a salesperson. So, and then on top of that, they often put a gatekeeper, a receptionist, and an assistant between themselves and you, so that you have to go through somebody. So it's just difficult to get the prospect on the phone. It's not impossible by any means, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you should not use the phone as a sales tool, but it's difficult, and you should know that those obstacles exist, and we'll talk about here today how to minimize those. So, and regarding when you add all that up, whether it's you're getting the prospect's voicemail or you're talking to the gatekeeper, you could spend 80% of your time just trying to get a hold of somebody. So, if you spent 10 hours a week prospecting, you could spend 8 hours of those 10 just grinding it out, getting voicemail, dealing with automated attendants, dealing with gatekeepers, and you might feel like you're wasting your time in those 8 hours. But the reality is, hopefully, you're taking steps to get one step forward. We'll talk a little bit about how you can do that, but it's part of the grinding activity of phone prospecting. And what you want to do is do the right thing so that you do get on the phone with prospects 20% of the time, 15% of the time, and that you execute well when you're in that range. So let's talk about here today how to improve all those odds and how to get you on the phone with prospects. But before you can figure out how to get the prospect on the other end of the phone, you need to figure out who to call, right? And this can often be challenging because you might have a territory or a list of accounts, a territory in terms of a geography, or a territory in terms of a list of accounts, and you might just see these business names and you're thinking to yourself, I don't even know who to reach out to. And if you really struggle to get past that, then you're not going to get anywhere. But if you can figure out and just sort of get a name and maybe a phone number, that can at least get you going in the right direction. So let's talk about how to do that. And I want to first start out by talking about organizational structures, and this really applies to business selling. You can just kind of skip this if you're selling more to individuals or selling to consumers, but most companies are organized the same way, and they have functional departments, just about all of them, with where you have marketing, you have sales, you have finance, you have IT, operations, HR. There might, as companies get bigger, there's other functional areas, of course, legal, environmental, safety, training, and whatnot. But these are some of the main ones. But the key takeaway here is that it's likely that your product is either used by or purchased by one or two of these departments. Usually, in most cases, there's at least two departments. Usually, one department, there's a sort of a primary and a secondary functional area that you can sell into. For example, you might sell financial software, so you might sell that to finance, but IT might also be an influencer or the ultimate decision maker. A lot of IT products impact operations. You might sell something that you can sell to marketing, but you can also sell it to HR at a secondary level. So it's important to know what functional areas you're focused on. And then most organizations from the top down are organized typically in the same way in terms of, you got the C level at the top, VP below that, director below that, manager below that, and at some level below that, then you sort of have the frontline worker. And this is a common structure, and it's important to know what level you should sell to. And the most common sales philosophy is sell top down, or only sell at the top. But some products aren't purchased just at the top, meaning only at the C level. Sometimes you still want to sell at the top, but the director level or the VP level might be the right place for the decision maker for what you sell. It's important to know that. In addition, really the higher up this ladder you get, the less accessible the individuals are, but really the more power that they have. At the lower level, they're more accessible, and often they have valuable information. So it's not horrible to call at lower levels if you fully acknowledge that they're not decision makers and not to spend too much time on them. But you can typically get in and get valuable information. Sometimes you can get a coach at the manager, director level. They might not be a decision maker, but you could establish them as a coach. So there is the saying of top-down selling, but in some ways you can sometimes do a parallel effort with top-down selling and bottom-up selling at the same time. Or sometimes you can do some prospecting or canvassing at the bottom to collect information. So then when you do call at the VP level, you can sound more intelligent. I'm sorry. What a word to missay there. You can sound more intelligent, and you can say something like, I've done some research on your organization. I know this and that and this and that. I've spoken to these three people, and that can warm up a cold call and make you sound more credible, more knowledgeable, and position you for success versus just coming in cold at the top. But that philosophy does actually go against the top-down selling, because you're not necessarily starting at the top, but you can look at it as though you're doing research before you start your top-down selling. But those are some levels. You definitely want to kind of know which level, and then each of these levels is assigned, it falls under those functional areas. So under HR, you typically have VP of HR, Director of HR, HR Manager, Finance, CFO, VP of Finance, Director of Finance. Some of the functional areas have different titles. It just doesn't always go VP, Director, Manager. Sometimes you have a C-level, like sales is an example. Often VP of Sales might be the most senior sales leader. Some organizations do have a Chief Sales Officer, but it's probably more common than not that it's just a VP of Sales, maybe VP of Worldwide Sales, that they report into the CEO or the senior level. This is a visual representation of an organization. If you're a visual individual and you're trying to figure out who should I call, who should I contact, it may help to have a good picture of this in your head, or maybe print this out and put it on the wall so you can kind of circle the actual key people from a title perspective that you're trying to reach. It's important to know that the title, the primary and secondary title or role that you're trying to get into. That can really help when it comes to finding the actual contacts to reach out to. So we're going to talk about a few resources that you can use to actually get the name, get the phone number, get the email address. A good place to start if you have a company CRM in place. You may not, but if the company you work for has a system, a database in place, likely there are lots of contacts already loaded up in there. So that's a good place to start. That's not a revolutionary concept, but it's one worth saying when talking about where to go to find contacts. But I'll tell you, and it's becoming very well known, that one of the best places to go to find out who to call is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you can do an advanced search. You could put in a company name, a role, see who is currently working at a company in that particular role, get all sorts of information on them. This resource is actually probably better than, even if you have a company CRM that's been loaded up with tons of data, this is actually going to be maybe a better resource of information. I'll tell you why. Because individuals manage their own contact record for the most part. I mean, some people are on LinkedIn and they create an account, they never touch it again for 10 years, right? But most people, when they change jobs, the first thing they do is they update their LinkedIn profile. So what that means